What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious, along with Jess, the Total Package, and the Nature Boy Joe, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Today's topic, whatever happened to Perry Saturn? For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give Jess a heart attack and give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? Joe, Perry Saturn, kind of a hidden gem, yeah? Wouldn't you say?
I would say it's 100% of a hidden gem. Like, it was one of those guys in that I'm not sure of the exact years, but like that 94 to like 96 period that like kind of blew up, where it was like you had Dean Malenko, you had Chris Benoit, you had Eddie Guerrero, you had Perry Saturn, that all kind of came out of like kind of perpetual nowhere and exploded on the scene and brought us all this. It was like a whole new generation of a whole new like a new type of wrestler that was on the scene, like stuff that we had never seen before. I mean, little hints here and there, but like not guys that were going out and doing it every day. I think this is a well-deserved like kind of insight into his career. We had fucking the dumpster guy, and we had the fucking Dennis guy, and we had this guy, and we had Repo Man, and we had Big Josh, and we had PNB, and we had this guy, and then all of a sudden there comes these guys coming out, and they don't have a gimmick per se. They're just badass wrestlers.
Yeah.
And they actually reminded me of like late 80s NWA wrestling. They reminded me of Tully Blanchard. They reminded me of Arn Anderson. They reminded me of, that style of wrestler where it was like, we don't have to be the biggest, like, shit, I'm going to steal their promo. We're not the biggest and we're not the strongest, but we're going to kick your teeth in. That kind of thing, where it was like, we're not 6'5", 300 pounds.
No.
We're 5'10", 220, but we're going to beat the shit out of you. And I thought it was an awesome gimmick.
Scrappy, bro. Scrappy dudes. Let's go. Put them up. Perry Arthur Satullo. Is it Satullo or Satullo? I think it's Satullo.
I think it's Satullo.
Satullo was born October.
Can watch anything.
Yeah, and unfortunately we'll get away with it. October 25th, 1966 is an American retired professional wrestler known by his ring name, Perry Saturn. Satullo enlisted in the United States Army for 4 years at the age of 17 before eventually embarking on a career of professional wrestling. He finished a bachelor's degree before he became a full-time wrestler. Satullo was also a certified graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School and has served in the United States Army Rangers.
That's amazing. Like, so, you think you're gonna read on, like, it's more tragic about him towards the end. Not the end. Sure. He's still with us, but like it's more tragic. But like he was in the military. Like, that's pretty respectable, man. Like, this guy did not take an easy way. This guy was a tough guy from the beginning. Like,
right.
It's pretty awesome. Like, when I wrote the notes, I was like, oh man, like, I kind of forgot all about that about him. Like, he's a badass. Like, he really is. Like,
yeah, for sure. Trying to play one on TV. It was like no. I've done stuff.
Yeah, this is me.
Like watching it's like reading the autobiography of like, I don't know, like Jesse Ventura. It's like, like I may have worn a feather boa and like, pranced around, but I was a Navy SEAL as well.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. On the side.
Not Jesse, but Satullo began training as a professional wrestler at Killer Kowalski School in Malden, Massachusetts, taking the ring name Saturn from the Roman god of the same name before later twerking it into a Perry Saturn. While working as the manager of a nightclub in Boston, Satullo met bouncer George Kayasgo, who expressed an interest in becoming a wrestler. Satullo sent him to Kowalski School to train, then offered to form a tag team with him. The Greek equivalent of the god Saturn was Cronus, so Satullo chose the ring name John Cronus for his friend of the bouncer Kayasgo. As Saturn and Cronus, Saturn and Cronus were their culture's respective gods of the harvest, Satullo proposed that they be known as the Harvesters of Sorrow. This is actually pretty well thought out when you think about it. But most people
Yeah,
probably
that
didn't
was
catch
their
it.
tag team. They were going to take that, and then they were going to call their tag team. They wanted it to be the Harvesters of Sorrow, but you're going to realize a very familiar person told them, "No one's going to understand that. Do this
Yeah, that's the
instead."
king. Jerry Lawler's like,
Fucking
that sounds.
stupid.
This
Stupid.
sounds. Yeah, this sounds great, but no one's gonna fucking know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
Jerry Lawler was like, "Don't do that." Like,
So just Justin Dave, when I read the notes today, I was like, I read they were going to be called the Harvesters of Sorrows, and I immediately, right now, today, was like, that's a fucking badass name.
It's
Okay.
cool.
The rest of the sentence of Jerry Lawler decided that it wasn't going to be good. I'm like, why the fuck wouldn't you decide that? First of all, that's a badass name. Second of all, this is at the exact same time that like the Metallica song had just come out, Harvester of Sorrow. Have you ever listened to the lyrics of that song?
yeah,
Like it's fucking, like language of the mad, bringer of the pain. Like it's all this like you could use that fucking song as the theme song for that would have been
Southern independent brain, right? Jerry Lawler was like, "Look, man, like wrestling fans don't know like." If you read comic books, which a lot of the fans are the same, a lot of wrestling fans are comic book video game players and all that stuff too. But like back in the day, they didn't figure that they plugged in with each other. So Jerry's just talking about 70s fucking Southern wrestling, going don't do that. That's too complicated. Just be the fucking Eliminators. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like,
Eliminators is great.
crazy.
But then after joining ECW in '95, Paul Heyman quickly abandoned plans to give them a sadism and masochism gimmick, and instead booked them as the unstoppable force in the ECW tag division, giving them a manager, Jason. Like like Jason from Friday the 13th? What are we talking about?
No, his name was just Jason.
His name was just Jason from the hardware store. That's cool. The Eliminators captured the ECW tag team titles 3 times between 1996 and 97 and feuded with teams such as the Gangstas and the Pitbulls.
The Eliminators are now 3-time ECW World Tag Team Champions. The belts are back where they belong, in the possession of Saturn and Cronus. To be World Tag Team Champions in ECW, you have to beat the best tag team in the world. There's only one problem with that. The path to victory is blocked with an unpassable obstacle. Total elimination.
So that's when
they were big.
I got my big satellite dish, and that's when I first kind of stumbled upon ECW. Never claimed to be a hardcore ECW fan because, like, I'm not going to lay claim to that because I was indifferent to it. I recognized a lot of the people, like when Benoit went over there, or Guerrero and Malenko, because I'd seen them from magazines, so I understood that. But one tag team that stood out to me like that was the Eliminators, and they had a finishing move called Total Elimination, and that shit was badass. And like, I don't remember which one did it, Saturn or Kronos, but one person would do a back spinning kick at the same time while the other person swept their legs from the back. So if you imagine an opponent is standing up and you have someone doing a sweeping kick on the back of their legs to make them bump, like, backwards. And then at the same time, I think it was Saturn that did the back spinning kick. So they did it like, I mean, it was like they fucked people up with that. Like, I'd watch that going, oh my God. Like, and it was Joe always says it's a G.I. Joe move. We probably practiced that with their G.I. Joe figures, going like, what if they did this, and you make them do something weird. Like, and I saw that and I was like, that is fucking awesome. Like, it just stopped me, like, when I first saw them. Then I became like, I love the Eliminators. Like, I'll never forget I don't remember, it might have been 97. I'm almost positive it was 97. Harlem Heat won Tag Team of the Year in PW Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
Oh, yeah.
They only beat the Eliminators by like 3 or 5 votes. I don't remember what it was, but it was like a fucking like, it was like 3 to 5 votes.
Fraction
and I
of
will
a
never
vote.
forget that. I was like, an ECW tag team almost fucking won Tag Team of the Year in a publication where, like, you know what I mean? Like, where fans voted. So that's like something. That's like a big deal.
It's huge. That's huge.
And you couldn't just vote from your phone back then, by the way. On August 28th of 97, Satula was offered a job at WCW's road agent Terry Taylor. Raw, who was impressed by a bump that Satula had taken in a scaffold match. He debuted in WCW on September 8th, facing Billy Kidman, but was sidelined for a month afterward as his knee had not entirely healed. Later that year, he and Kidman joined the Flock, a heel stable of misfits and misanthropists. I'm not saying that right. Wow. Led by the nihilistic
Group
Raven.
of misfits, almost like goth people. Like, so also on
Island
a
of
sub
Misfit
note or
Toys,
whatever, listen, you can say a lot about the way WCW managed some people in 97, 98 or whatever, but the Ravens Flock is so fucking underrated and like nobody talks
incredible.
about it. First of all, Raven did amazing work in, again, after being known on ECW from like 95, 96, like Raven, Bischoff fucking plucked him because like WWF was doing the same fucking thing. Like they saw how cool ECW was, and they honestly they recognized that Paul Heyman's an evil genius, but he cannot be controlled.
Of that group of people, like if I remember correctly, of Saturn, Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko, I actually remember Perry Saturn being the most talented out of the group. Like when we first saw them, when they first debuted, like when that first, like this first started to come out.
I think he always was, and Malenko didn't have any charisma, but like you had
Malenko had the most talent, but like he couldn't sell. He couldn't sell shit on the mic,
back, and he wrestled like dynamite, so people loved Benoit and everything. And then Guerrero had charisma out the asshole. He just had to learn it and figure it out in WCW. But when they got Saturn, I remember going like, he's really fucking good. And I watched him doing a lot of things, and like just that WCW never highlighted. And I watched him, and I was like, God damn it! Like I wish he was fucking like 30 pounds lighter, because he'd be the best cruiserweight in the fucking business right now, hands down. But because he had bulk to him, they didn't classify him as that. So it was like he was always kind of under Raven. Like, and even in the storyline, it was like Saturn was his underling. And then they did do a storyline where Saturn kind of said, I'm done with you. And the place popped every time. And I think Saturn was kind of injury ridden, to be honest, too. I think a lot of times his knees would give out. He'd go away for a while and lose that momentum. But in WCW, the Flock was so underrated. Raven was underrated, and so was Saturn's work. Saturn was really good. And if you go back and watch any match we do on our reviews or whatever, I watch any Saturn match, I'm like, God damn it, he's good. Like, it's ridiculous how good he was. Like,
super talented. They were doing things that just the industry wasn't ready for yet.
I think we've talked about Raven being ahead of his time in a lot of conversations. I don't know if we had an actual podcast about that, but we've talked about Raven being way ahead of his time, and just it was like it is the Island of Misfit Toys, where he definitely had an impact, but you wonder if you put him somewhere else, you change the time frame. But he's a disruptor for sure. It was just not. It wasn't what you expected in wrestling, especially at that time. And Raven continued to do it for almost a decade in other places. So it's pretty impressive what Raven had done. This isn't a Raven podcast, I get it, but Saturn is underneath that umbrella for at least a moment.
Where did when Saturn came, obviously I feel like we've been talking a lot about the WCW movement. They obviously came to WWE as part of the Radicals.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. Yep.
Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. No, but we're definitely gonna get that. There's a lot of insane stuff there, Joe. Well, we're gonna get to broom wrestling before you know it, but it's in there. Speaking of crazy stuff, don't forget that Jericho was a big part of the storyline in the WCW set, and Jericho would cost Saturn a number of matches with the help of crooked referee Scott Dickinson. He mocked Saturn's complaints and accused him of crying like a schoolgirl. This led to Jericho challenging Saturn to a loser wears a dress for 90 days match at Sold Out in January of 99, which he won after some suspect officiating for Dickinson. So Jericho won that match.
After Jericho just slapped Dickinson in the face. This is absolutely, if I can use the old well-worn term, a travesty of justice. Scott Dickinson had no business even refereeing the match.
What an embarrassing, humiliating moment this has to be.
But the earrings are a nice touch.
A tough guy like Perry Saturn. Oh. Oh, now he's going to add the finishing touches of all people.
Oh, and he's going braless.
Taking a bizarre goth transvestite gimmick, Saturn began wearing a variety of dresses to the ring, using a variation of Marilyn Manson's The Beautiful People as his entrance music. He appeared to begin enjoying wearing dresses and even wore cosmetics to complement those. Saturn finally stopped wearing them after defeating Jericho in a dog collar match at Uncensored on March 14th of
What sucked
1999.
about this time period that I remember about is like they were finally putting a little bit of stock in Saturn, and then they put this gimmick on him, and he came out wearing a skirt, and he was like,
He
kind
sold
of
it, by the way. Did he
but
100% buy
games
into
are
it?
on too, and there's a gimmick that he has to inherit when he gets to WWE later that he
Mhm.
still makes his own, which is why I really love Saturn. Like, and it's one of those things where you hear the Vince the popular phrase on Austin's podcast that he said a year later. They got to grab that brass ring. You got to and Bruce always says you got to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. I'm like, there's a lot of wrestlers I can name that you did give them a chicken shit gimmick and they made chicken salad and you still didn't fucking do anything with them. So it's like, like I feel bad about somebody like Saturn
Well,
because like
Jess,
it was maybe
did you-
demons,
did
it
you
was
put
maybe
the-
an attitude or whatever, like just didn't work. And like it's like, but he did everything you asked him to do. Like he wore a shit, Bischoff's like, you want to push him? Make him get makeup on and did piercings and the
Jess, though,
okay.
did you put the grapes in the chicken salad? Did you?
That's probably what happened.
They didn't put in the
Right.
grapes. You got to put in the grapes. Benoit and Saturn continued to team together and eventually formed a stable with Shane Douglas and Dean Malenko, known as the Revolution. By the way, that's dope. Like that, you put those four people together. That's an insane amount of talent in the Revolution. Booker Kevin Sullivan opined that Saturn was incapable of getting over with fans. Okay, doofus. Prompting the wrestler to negotiate with the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, in case you weren't sure who that was, in January of 2000. Saturn, along with Benoit, Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero, was granted a release from WCW and signed a 3-year contract with the WWF. In hindsight, is that not insane? That's insane. All that talent.
Let them all go.
Yeah, bye. Don't let the door hit in the ass on the way out. Like
In what year? 99?
99. Yeah.
Well,
That
WCW was going to go out of business in 2 years later, so it did seem
it
like.
was January of 2000 when they left.
Wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. My God, that's Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko. What are you doing here tonight? What the hell is going on here? Those four guys. Well, King, we know that it's all over the internet. They thumb their noses at their last employer.
Well, I know that.
What the hell is? They walked out on the Ted Turner organization, but what are they doing here?
And they got out.
So a year later, like WCW was out of business anyway. So maybe they were jumping ship before they.
Maybe they were doing them a favor.
For those people that say that when Punk jumped back over and Cody jumped over, like, oh, AEW is doing what WCW did before its 9 days. I was like,
not what's happening.
Not true, because WCW. Well, first of all, Bischoff got suspended or fired in the fall of '99, and I'm not saying Bischoff would have kept any of these people, but he would not have let four walk out in one. I'm telling you, Bischoff wouldn't have allowed that to happen. Something he would have did something. Like he might have let one of them go, but he would not have let Benoit go and Malenko. Like he would have been like, no, and Guerrero, he would have been like, no, no way.
There's no way he would let Guerrero go.
Guerrero would have been like, what the fuck? Like, no way.
Actually, well, I don't know if I wrote this in the notes or whatever, but the Bruce Pritchard said the guy they were all looking at was Saturn when he came over.
The whole time.
They didn't think highly of Benoit or anything like that. They were just like, okay, we'll bring him over because they had a lot of hype or whatever. But then they knew Benoit's pedigree, so they're like, okay, he was at least featured. So they were interested in Benoit. But Saturn was the guy that they were like, dude, Guerrero and Malenko, they were like, that's fine. Whatever, we got four.
That's insane. I mean, Malenko, you can kind of understand, and I feel really bad about saying it, but he's kind of
He had no
He's-
charisma for that company.
Well,
There was that, and he was
In the
older.
grand scheme of things,
Sorry, I'll probably edit all this out, but I need to distinguish
Oh,
that.
it's not the same.
WCW was dying here, and we all knew it. But when they let 4 of the heart of their roster leave, the people,
Right.
the 4 people you should have been fucking pushing, and you didn't push. When they let those 4 walk, I'm like, oh, they're gone. Like they're dumb and dead. Like
Dumb
Chris
and
Hogan-
dead. That's well
Chris Hogan
said.
versus Luger for the 9,000th fucking time next on the
Yeah.
pay-per-view. But you let Saturn, Guerrero, Malenko, and Benoit fucking walk. What are you fucking doing? What are you
2 people
doing?
that would
Like,
go on to be like 4 years later, like
Punk, yeah,
world
with Punk,
champions.
there's a lot of different shit that happened in AEW
two, yeah.
backstage. There's a lot of different. Those fucking other people can walk. These guys were guys that you gave them enough time as if you were going to push them to the next level, and then you just didn't. And then you're like, just
Right.
fuck off then. Just go. Fuck off. It's like,
Uh,
okay. Like, you guys are fucking stupid. Like, sorry. Like, it was one of the dumbest fucking things.
It's
Even
crazy.
for a dying company, one of the dumbest fucking shit moves I've ever seen. Like, what are you doing right now?
Giving up.
I mean,
Benoit-
Game, right? Can Guerrero and Benoit went on to win world titles? Like,
They
geez.
did.
Yeah.
They sure as hell did. Within a year of each other. Benoit, Guerrero, Saturn, and Malenko, dubbed as the Radicals with a Z, debuted the Radicals in the WWF during the Attitude Era on July 31st of 2000. They appeared in the front row of a live episode of Raw and brawled with the New Age Outlaws after the Road Dogg literally fell into their laps. Cactus Jack urged them to help fight the heel McMahon Helmsley faction, but they quickly turned on Jack in order to gain employment from Triple H, who was then controlling the WWF. That doesn't sound familiar at all. It's weird. After a match on the May 17, 2001 episode of Jacked with 2Ks, in which he legitimately attacked jobber Mike Bell, Saturn immediately underwent a significant gimmick change and possibly as punishment for his actions was involved in storylines and becoming his infatuation with a mop. No joke, because
I don't
some
care
people
what
say
it says. Like, I remember that. He called him Moppy. He fucking made it work. Like, he would make people laugh. He would do stupid backstage vignettes, and he would show up with the stupid mop, and he's like, me and Moppy. And, like, it was almost like a modern-day Hacksaw Duggan, like, the way he talked.
But I think
People started, like, you know, like, in the Attitude Era, like, they would do the backstage vignettes, but you could hear the crowd respond because they'd be on Titantron. And he was getting pops every time he came out there. Another fucking thing where I was like, he grabbed the brass ring, but it was a punishment because it beat up that jobber, Mike Bell, which beat the shit out of Mike Bell. For the record, beat the shit out of him. Like, Mike Bell
and
pissed off.
if you go on the record, we've talked about Wrestling Getting Real, and Perry Saturn versus Mike Bell is in our archives, so go look that up. It is important. According to Saturn, Bell dropped him on his head in a bad way, and he kind of blacked out for a moment, and then he felt rage, and he did some horrifying things to Mike Bell that were out of control, which led to the punishment of you're going to basically have a storyline with a mop, which is kind of the joke of if you're really that good, you can wrestle a mop, and you're just that good.
Yeah.
Well, let's go.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Saturn's like, okay, I fucked up, and he goes on record, like, yeah, I messed up. I got hit hard on my head, and I got upset, and I tried to hurt Mike Bell. He admits to that 100%. He doesn't deny it. I know it's not in the notes here, but then he
said that. Yeah.
He said that, and he really legitly said, okay, you're going to put me in this storyline. I'm going to accept, and I'm going to buy into it 100%. And he did. You know, after receiving head trauma and matches against the Acolytes, Protection Agency, APA, and Raven, Saturn began acting eccentric and speaking nonsensically, allegedly as a result of a concussion. Saturn began uttering the phrase, "You're welcome," at inopportune intervals, and then fell in love with Boppy, an inanimate mop he believed was alive, similar to Wilson, the volleyball in the 2000 film.
Forgot.
I'm sorry, Wilson.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Wilson.
Very nice to meet you. Sherry, this is Terry.
Hi. Very nice to meet you.
Sherry, this is Perry.
Hi, Perry.
Here.
You smell like a Viking. You're welcome.
I forgot about the "you're welcome" thing. He would do that all the time. I fucking totally forgot about that. He would come in with the mop, and didn't even matter like what they were talking about. He'd be like, "You're welcome," and he would just fucking leave. And like if people were popping and laughing at him, like again, like it sucks that like he was getting punished and like but he was funny. He made it work somehow. Like everybody remembers Moppy from the Attitude Era. It's really like a staple. You're welcome. And he drew a face on the mop.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he definitely 100% bought into the storyline, the punishment, everything. Immediately after leaving the WWF, Saturn toured Europe with the World Wrestling All-Stars promotion and their European tour, mainly working against Sabu. Wow, that must have tore the house down. Saturn worked for New Japan Pro Wrestling and the American Independent Circuit before retiring from professional wrestling due to injuries in 2004. He would be homeless for years due to drug addiction, unfortunately. Saturn was involved in the April 04 altercation where two men, where he came to the aid of a woman as they were in the process of taking advantage of. He fought the men and was shot with a 25 caliber handgun in the back of the neck and in the right shoulder, to which he originally thought he had received a punch. As a result of the scuffle, that wasn't a punch. I got shot with a gun.
I changed the wording of it or whatever. I think everybody gets when I say taking advantage of. You can't say the R word on.
I understand.
YouTube. So two men were trying to take advantage of
assault.
A woman.
They were trying to assault.
Saturn came to their defense and he beat the shit out of them. And they happened to have a gun. And when he walked away, he got shot in the shoulder. And he just thought, man, I think I pinched myself. Like I pinched my nerve trying to fight these guys. I fucking shot like in the shoulder. He didn't know.
Wow.
I did stumble up on two guys attacking a girl. I intervened, and I didn't think anything before. I just thought that was the thing.
Where was this?
It was in outside Atlanta.
Okay.
And I got shot here in the neck and here in the shoulder. I'm missing my collarbone. There's a big hole there from where my collarbone used to be. And here I have plates and screws in my neck. They did a pretty good job of plastic surgery. It's only a little scar now.
Really? Yeah.
It used to be a big, giant thing, But, that was the beginning of the end, that's when I really started getting bad on drugs and stuff, too, because I couldn't hardly do anything. I was in a halo, my arm in a sling, and just a pity party, felt bad for myself probably, and just hit it all in drugs.
Like later, oh, fuck, like I got shot.
After being shot, Saturn began addicted to methamphetamine, was homeless for 2.5 years. He disappeared from public view, was not seen for several years, with his family and friends unaware of his whereabouts. He reemerged in 2010, having resolved his addiction. During an interview with Bill Apter in September of 2016, Satul revealed that he was dealing with a traumatic brain injury that limited his abilities. And then in November of 2016, the Boston Globe reported that Satul had joined a class action lawsuit against WWE, litigated by Konstantin Kryos, who has been involved in a number of lawsuits against them, alleging that he is suffering from multiple symptoms of repetitive traumatic brain injuries and is undergoing neurological care. U.S. District Judge Vanessa Lynn Bryant dismissed that lawsuit as of late 2018. So currently, these people, all these head injuries with these independent contractor sets, are not receiving any kind of compensation.
Oh, you're going to get
like it or
success from that, right? Like, listen, as sad as his story is, and I hope he's okay now, and it seems like he's at least like, I don't know if he's back, using again or whatever. I don't know. Somebody shared a picture on our text thread a couple weeks ago of him, or about a month ago, which is actually why I thought of this, to be honest. Where he was drinking out of like the mule cup or whatever, the copper, thing or whatever, which I hope was just water. Who knows? But I mean, I think he is suffering from brain damage and addiction, like, damage and stuff like that too, which is sad because, like, look, the Demolition Axe specifically, I think, is still suing the WWE, which is why they're not in the Hall of Fame because of head injuries and stuff like that. Like, I feel there's such, I don't know. I'm not a pro wrestler, right? Like I feel like there's a fine line. I think you all know what you get into when you become a professional wrestler. And the stuff that he did in ECW, I mean, had to have done damage. I mean, he fell on his head in WCW, I'm sure. And it's like a lot of them when they're on their last leg and they have no money. And that's the biggest problem, right? Is there's no
Join a
retirement
lawsuit.
fund for these guys. There's no union for these guys and girls. There's nothing like that, and they get desperate and they get sick. And by sick, I mean like suffering from concussion syndrome and stuff like that. Like that's crazy. And then they use substances and they become alcoholics and then they're like, oh, some fucking ambulance chaser's like, dude, jump on this lawsuit. We'll sue Vince for all this money. And like they just do it, and it's like I'm assuming that's why he did it. But it's like, God, it sucks for him. Like he's a guy who was fucking super talented and super physical in there. And as a wrestling fan, I loved his style of wrestling. And he did everything. He fucking made friends with the mop. He cross-dressed. He did everything he had to do, to try to get over it. And it just didn't happen for whatever various reasons. And then he's just so down on his luck, and he's homeless, and he's an addict, and he's probably an addict because his brain injuries are fucking causing him mental anguish and pain. The anxiety must be insane. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like when you get a brain injury, shit goes wrong. You get anxiety, you get, all kinds of stuff. You get angry, you get violent, and he just jumped on this bandwagon. And, so many of these lawsuits have been dismissed, by the way. And I'm not saying that means WWE's right. It's like, but they just go after WWE because they're the only person standing after a while. It's like, but dude, he chose to be a professional wrestler, and you get dropped on your fucking head. And when you're in ECW for 3 years, that shit was intense. Like, dude, they did some shit to each other in that ECW, in that ECW ring. And, all wrestling's dangerous, but when you're in a renegade promotion that's trying to prove a point, like they're going to fucking fall on each other's heads and hit their bell rung, which now we know are concussions, and they're going to fucking just go drink it away that night, and still fall asleep when you're not supposed to, when you get dropped in your goddamn
It's really
head.
bad for you.
It's like, so I feel so fucking bad for him because I think it's better now because these wrestlers only wrestle probably 20 times a month now. And as they shouldn't, and I don't want them to kill themselves. And
restricted.
there might be one house show now, and they all get these big ass tour buses they fucking drive on. They all get, remember you used to get made fun of if you bought a first class ticket, you get fucking ribbed because, oh, you think you're so special, you get first class ticket. Like now they fly first class because it's part of their contract. They drive in buses, it's part of their fucking contract. And they only wrestle X amount of dates because they don't want to fucking hurt themselves, more than they need to. And so I think about somebody like Saturn, and I look at today's wrestling, I'm like, I wish you came along 20 years later. I really do, because you're so fucking good. If you were in today's environment, you wouldn't get dropped on your head. You wouldn't have suffered. And I feel fucking bad, for all the people that we were kids watching in our early 20s even, they just fucking didn't have that care. And then now it's like they got it, but it's like I look at the past people going like, man, fuck, I wish you were protected. I wish that you were around in the last 10 years versus, fucking 25 years ago where nobody cared. Like when you rung your bell, just go home, go to your hotel room.
And you can argue the whole thing started with the Mike Bell incident. I mean, I don't know for sure if that's what really rung his bell for. I'm not trying to be.
Oh, he had his bell rung before that. As the Eliminators, if you go back and watch the match,
right.
Jesus Christ,
But that's where things took a really bad turn for him, and he blacked out, and he did things that he shouldn't have done, according to him and what he feels. But again, I
if you wrestled in the 90s, you were lucky to make it out.
It's this crazy time that happened, this medium version that nobody talks about, that a lot of the addiction started. Guerrero, Benoit, we don't know what Benoit was doing. I know he was a drinker, but nobody really knows what Benoit was doing. Or he was falling on his head. I know that for sure. And so it's, you know what I mean? And it's like you get the Guerrero, the Benoits, all of them came. They were this hybrid wrestler that's like, I want to be stiff. I want to be a little snug. I want to fuck you up a little bit, but I'm going to fuck you up.
They wanted to be more than they saw, but they didn't know how to do it in a way that made them safe.
Right.
And that's unfortunately there almost needs to be a category of wrestler in that, or a category for those wrestlers that fell within that category of how did you get us from the 80s to 2000s without fucking hurting yourself without dying.
That
Like,
decade
I mean,
from
I don't
1990
know
to
how to do it.
2000 was crazy. Like,
Pardon?
It was desperate.
from 1990 to 2000, that
I think
decade
it's like
was fucking
when
crazy.
you need to like learn and like grow and progress and like do something different and go like push the envelope. But the only way they knew how to push the envelope was to go bigger and extreme and like higher and fall farther and put themselves more and more and more and more in danger. And you know, we appreciated it, but like in the grand scheme of things,
The industry couldn't support them. Like there's still no retirement fund for them. They probably make more money now, and they have lawyers and agents now that set up all that shit for them. They didn't fucking. You mean tell me that Saturn had a fucking agent? No, like you know what I mean? Like they just fucking went. Oh, you want to hire me? Cool, I'll go. Like, and what do you do here? I can do that. Like, and it's just crazy. Even when Mick Foley, like that, Foley was like that weird, like he fell in that purgatory, like before and after WCW.
Yeah,
it was a weird hybrid where he somehow found himself in the mainstream and on the extremities, and like could sell himself and do it in both arenas. And people, like.
Well, and he's a rarity. Like he's fucked up. Like he didn't have an addictive personality. He never drank alcohol or took pills. And like it's in his DNA. Not everybody's that lucky. Some people are like, oh, this helps. I'm gonna do it over and over and over again. Oh, and I'll drink with it too. And it's like it's this common tale that came out of that decade from like 90 to 2000 that we're still, it haunts us today because we lost so many great people from it. Yeah. And even people that Saturn that are still with us just couldn't like.
I would say from 85 to 2000.
Right? Yeah, even more. Yeah,
100%. Well, I'm
glad we did this with Saturn because like he's somebody that we always watch, and all the review episodes that we do were like, and we'll go always to that match with Saturn's in, and we're like, this match is a fucking B or an A. Like holy shit! Like it's like you just Raven and Saturn. I didn't talk about Raven and Saturn. Fall Brawl 98. Do yourself a favor.
That's it. Even flow. 1, 2. Defeating, and neither can Raven.
Who's kicked out of the even flow?
Incredible. Saturn. He's gonna book him out. Dead belly driver. DVD. It's over.
What a victory. What a match.
Like one of the best matches I've ever seen. Like it was so good, and like they told a story, but again, it wasn't majorly pushed by the company, so it was just kind of like, it was a mid-card feud or whatever. But those two, you could tell like they were like, we were in ECW and we dreamed about doing this on this stage, so let's just do it at a Fall Brawl pay-per-view. You know what I mean? Like let's just do it. Like they just did it.
Yeah.
Just can you say again the match that we're supposed to watch? Perry
WCW Fall Brawl 1998, and it's Perry Saturn against Raven, and it's excellent.
Fans, go out and make sure to make your way out and look at that.
I'm pretty sure it was a Raven's rules, which meant no disqualification in WCW.
That's right.
But it was excellent. It was excellent. Like it was
excellent. Raven's rules for sure.
Make sure to check it out.
Yeah, give that one a look. See, for audio fans, give us a listen. Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? For Joe, Jess, and Dave, this is the O.W.P signing off. Have a good one.